Hey, today we're talking about Karl Marx, communism, socialism, the book he wrote, the Communist Manifesto. He also wrote that with Frederick Engels. He was against capitalism and he believed the evils of the Industrial Revolution would cause the workers to rise up and overthrow the rich and seize control of the factors of production. Here's a picture of Karl Marx. He was a philosopher. He studied at the University of Berlin. He also was a journalist and an economist. In about 1849, he joined a flood of radicals and he fled Central Europe for England. He declared in his book, The Communist Manifesto, that the working men have no country. He wanted the working men and women to rise up and overthrow the rich and seize control of the factories and then divide everything equally. That was his idea. He outlined that in his book, The Communist Manifesto. He said that all of history has been a struggle between the classes. He said between the haves, which were rich, and the have nots, which were poor. During the Industrial Revolution, he believed the wealthy, the greedy factory owners, the bourgeoisie were taking advantage of the poor factory workers, which he called the proletariat. The factory workers were not earning enough money to live. The proletariat, the factory workers, Karl Marx said, should rise up. They should overthrow the bourgeoisie, overthrow the rich. There should be a violent revolution. They should eliminate this idea of laissez-faire capitalism. He thought that was just for the greedy rich people. He believed the proletariat could create a new kind of society where everything would be shared. And this was a socialist communist idea. If you look, his ideas went all the way down to Mexico. And you have this mural, and here's Karl Marx, and he's got his communist ideas, and he's speaking to the people of Mexico about rebelling. It's painted in Mexico City today. And in the background, it's nice. You can see the factories, the industrial, the farms, and he's calling for the people, the masses in the background to rise up and take control of business. Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, they thought laissez-faire was bad. They thought only factory workers were making money. And their famous book was the Communist Manifesto. They co-wrote it in 1848. It outlines the ideas of communism. This is an example of the proletariat. This is a picture taken outside of a factory. Karl Marx believed that the industrial workers, the proletariat, and the farmers would rise up around the world and overthrow the capitalists. And he called for the masses to start a communist revolution. And it's going to happen in some countries. Some of the countries that were going to become communist, the Soviet Union, but the Soviet Union isn't communist anymore. China is. They've modified it. Vietnam's communist still today. Cuba's communist, Laos, and North Korea. And all these revolutions were inspired by the writings of Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. Here's a map, and this map shows the extent, the maximum extent of socialist states around the world. And if you look up here, you can see Russia, which was the first country to become communist, and the countries that took over here in Europe, the satellite nations that made communist. China's right here, which was communist. Vietnam, communist. North Korea, communist. Countries in Africa were communist. Mozambique was communist. And then all the way over here, you'll notice, just off the coast of Florida, Cuba became communist, and it's still communist today. So between 1979 and 1983, this was the furthest extent of communism. Here's a picture. This is Karl Marx, and here's Frederick Engels. They were the two people who authored the book, The Communist Manifesto, which was published in 1848 and was sort of the guidelines of the communist revolution. So there's a photograph of those two. Here's a copy of the Communist Manifesto.